Well, good evening. It's Martini time, and glad you're with me. And we're going to. Let me turn him around. I always ask my frog to dive into the pond of the unconscious, or the beyond the pale, or beyond the beyond, and come up with an insight. So I thought I would talk about a frog. And I really have lost track of time, but I think I have a little Buddha pond in the backyard that is two ponds with a pump and a little stream that connects them. So I have an upper pond and a lower pond. Each one's about the size of a large bathtub. And I have some koi in there that have been there ever since I got it, and they're now about that big. And they were there originally. I had a friend of mine who was a very talented fella, and he created the Zen pond for me, or the Buddha pond. And we got a Buddha statue and had a little initiation and put some candles and incense and did some chants and initiated the Buddha pond. And that year, a frog appeared. Now, I didn't put any frogs in there, but a frog appeared. And you can see him right here. That's alive. That's not photoshopped. That's a huge old bullfrog. And he appeared, and he would sit in the little bowl, the begging bowl of the Buddha. That's a yard Buddha, and I think that's the empty bowl of the Buddha. And he would sit in there, and so I could walk, as you can see, I could walk right up and take a picture. No other frog has done that. They always, any frogs that have come, they never last longer than a year, but the frogs come and go, and they always jump when I go when I approach the pond. They're like the Zen haiku, the old pond, a frog jumps in, plop. So whenever I would approach the frogs, if there was one, he would jump in. So you never would, except that one frog. He would just sit there, and every day he would come back and sit there. So I really had I said, wow, this is a Buddha frog. It really is. And I've never had one since, but that was enough. And I took a picture of him to record him for posterity. So the frog, and when I read a lot of Joseph Campbell, one of the fairy tales that he talked about was the one that we're all familiar with, was the little girl with the golden ball, and she drops it in the pond, and it was her treasure, and the frog was sitting there. He says, I'll get it back for you if you marry me. And so she said, oh, sure, I'll marry you. And so he dove down and came up with her treasure. And she went home happily with her treasure, and then the frog knocked on the door, and she looked down and says, what? And her father was a king. He says, well, you promised to marry me. And the frog said, and the king said, well, you made a promise. You're a princess. You have to keep it. So she brought him in. And then he sat at the table. I want to eat there. And then he wants to eat there. And then I want to go to your bedroom. And I think the fairy tale has two endings. One of them is that she threw him against the wall and he became a prince. And the other one was she kissed him and he became a prince. But either way, he became a prince. And but the point is, of the story was that the frog is a transitional being that can go into the below the consciousness and above, like a submarine. Happy below the water, happy above. You can go in two worlds, back and forth. So if you want to retrieve a treasure, you have to ask a frog or a transitional being. That's what a threshold being is. A threshold being can swim in two worlds, you see, back and forth. So a threshold being, Jesus is a threshold being. So there's two worlds. There's earth and there's heaven. And so God's in heaven, man's on earth. And so the Christianity says, well, you can't get to heaven. You can't correspond to heaven unless you have a mediator. So Jesus is the mediator. So he can go back and forth, you see. It's a frog, speaking metaphorically. But see the idea. So every culture has a transitional being. In the Hindu culture, it's Ganesha, the little elephant god. See, he is a transitional being. He, if you want to go to see Shiva and Parvati, his wife, Ganesh is at the door. You have to go through Ganesh. The guru is a transitional being. Ganesh and this is kind of like a metaphorical guru. So the guru in Hindu and Indian mythology is a threshold being. If you want to go to enlightenment or unity or the God or whatever you call it, you have to go through the guru. He's a threshold guardian. So he won't let you through until you're ready. He won't let you through until you can lift the hammer. The GE commercial, I love that. You can't lift the hammer. You're not getting through. You see, you're not going to the Father. So you see, Jesus said, I and the Father are one. So he was the frog. He could go back and forth. So every culture, every religion, and every non-religion, fairy tales or secular religious metaphors, you could say, all have a threshold being. Except in our Western rational world. You see, we live in a dead world, frankly, because science, if that's all it's like the sky people in Avatar, everything is just trees. There are no home trees. There's no wonder. There's no sacred. Everything is just flat stuff. No sacred. Everything happens by accident, or it's all profane. Now in Buddhism, that's called samsara. Samsara is the wheel of stuff turning over. It's kind of like the world is just like a hamster wheel, or it's just like what I'm thinking, where you would put a composter, where you just put the garbage in the composter and turn it around, you see, or a landfill. It's just recycled stuff. Everything is just recycled, and it's just form, it's just plastic, it's just stuff, you see. So there's no sacred in that world. So the materialistic worldview has kind of killed the sacred. But we all want the sacred. We're hungry for the sacred, because the sacred is meaning in itself. You can feel the sacred, and it's unity. The sacred is peace. The sacred integrates everything. So our places of sacred, usually cemeteries, or places where somebody has sacrificed or died, the sacred place is someplace you can feel. So it's not a rationally, you can look around, there's nothing sacred here, you see, but you feel it. So it's an integrating place. It's a place where all the forces of the material world are in balance. Maybe that's a good description. So the sacred is a place where all of nature, all of man, everything is in balance. So it's kind of like zero, you see. So, but in previous cultures, North American cultures, Indian cultures, Aboriginal cultures, everything is sacred. You can't go anywhere that isn't sacred. Pandora in Avatar was sacred. So that was our mythic understanding of the sacred, as compared to the secular flatland of the sky people. Everything is, but they were looking for unobtainium. So what's not obtainable in that world? The sacred. So this frog, this frog, transitional frog figure, you see, is a metaphor, but it is not just fantasy. If it's for you, I mean, we have to create our own sacred. We have to create our own threshold beings. We have to suspend disbelief. When we go to a movie, we suspend disbelief and we enter into the movie and we believe the movie is real because we've suspended the belief that it's not real. So we suspend belief. So we go into a play mind when we go to a movie or read a book. In the back of our mind, we know it's not real, but we suspend that and we enter joyfully into the movie or into the book, you see, or TV show or whatever, or the play, you know. So there is a willing surrender to the movie or something that makes, and in the movie or the play, everything is integrated. Nothing in the play or the movie is just randomly thrown in there. If you watch a mystery, which before I was watching this, there's Midsummer's Mysteries, we watch those, and in a mystery there's always clues. Everything fits in a mystery, and so we're always looking for the clue, you know, and sometimes they're false clues who will think, oh, he did it because I just saw a clue, but then that was the trick, you see. But it was there, not randomly, but to mislead you. So this idea of the sacred, the Buddha pond, ponds, places where everything, nature, and everything is integrated. Zen in Japan is very big in there. All the Zen gardens and the Zen ponds are sacred places where everything is at balance. Everything is at ease. We like our home to be like that. We like our homes to have that sacred feeling of everything is all the forces are in balance there. See, when they get out of balance, there's stress, there's tension, there's anxiety, something's missing, something has to be fixed, something's wrong, something dark, you know, something disturbing, something is out of balance, you see. And so, but the sacred is a place where you can feel the presence. And what is presence? But it's where everything fits. It's just everything is integrated and everything is in harmony, you know, me and you and the whole thing. So this, I reflect on my Buddha frog, and now that it's spring, I'm working in the pond, and I have a lily pad in a bucket, and it's coming up, and I had to put some fertilizer in it, and I need to do some weeding now, and so the Buddha, you know, so this is kind of like an exterior for me. The Buddha pond is kind of like an exterior representation of an interior place. So the sacred, the inside and the outside is one. It's not two. They're not rubbing against each other, you see. The inside and the outside are one, but from two different views, you see. So the one that has, like a coin, if you look at a coin, has heads and tails, but it's one coin. But we only perceive it from the head side or the tail side. So the world is sacred when we can see it as one, while at the same time realizing that it's heads and tails. So the world is sacred, but we only we perceive it as not being sacred when we see, I just want heads. I don't want any tails. Get rid of the tails, I just want heads. That's samsara. That's the flat world. That's the world that has lost the sacred. Because the sacred is one, and it's both sides of everything. So everything is ambiguous. Everything has two sides, and when we try to cut them in half and just have up and no down, hot and no cold, positive, no negative, we destroy the sacred. The sacred is where the opposites are integrated and balanced. And in the sacred, then, we can see the one that includes the two opposites that are contradictory but mutually dependent, you see. So the sacred is a place where the one is felt. When the one that holds the two manifested, we can feel it because we are that too. We're feeling ourself. We're feeling our own sacredness. So we are all sacred. The world is sacred. But it's our perception that cuts it in two so that we just want heads and no tails. I'll see you in the morning.